Hi, and welcome to this new tutorial video in which I'll be showing you how to create a printed circuit board layout or PCB. We'll be starting with a schematic design and we'll create our PCB by editing the outline shape, placing components, and routing our signals. Our starting point will be the schematic we've created in our previous tutorial. If you haven't watched the relative video yet, I recommend you do so before continuing to watch this one. With our schematic on the screen, I'm going to select Switch to PCB icon. This will bring up the PCB specific interface. Before I begin placing components on the PCB, I'm going to use a manufacturing dialog to get to the design rule check settings. Here, we'll be setting or loading manufacturing rules or requirements we need to be following to get our boards actually made. We can manually set our clearances, distance, sizes, and the supply parameters we want to use for our pad thermals, and much more. Let's go ahead and proceed to resize the outline of our board to satisfy our design. I'm going to first begin moving the JST connector. Notice that the connector will not stop on the board edge. This is because we have the violator mode set to walk around. If we set our violator mode to ignore, notice that I can move the connector freely. Now DRC remains active by showing me the clearance violation by using these hatch marks. I'm going to continue working with the walk around violator mode active, which is the one we strongly recommend. Just as we did in the schematic, I'm going to be using the right mouse button to rotate my components. For better precision, I'm going to go ahead and change my grid. And I'm going to go ahead and proceed placing the remaining components. After placing my LEDs, I'm going to go ahead and proceed placing my passive components. I'm going to try to line them up as best as I can visually, but I'm going to show you how you could use the align command to fine-tune the placement of your parts. That way your PCB looks aesthetically better. After selecting the components, I will use the align command from the modify tab. From the panel, you're going to see many options. For our example, we want to distribute the components evenly and make sure that they align vertically. This is looking a lot better. Well, in my lab, I no longer have the 555 timer and an SOIC package in my lab. But I do have the through-hole version here available. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to switch to package. From the context menu, I will select the option package. And from the list of packages available, I'm going to go ahead and select the one that I currently have. When I get my PCB made, I will not have the value of the components being displayed. So for that reason, I'm going to actually turn off the t-value layer using the display panel. I'm going to be using the reposition attribute option to make our component reference designator look more consistent. That way when I'm looking at the board and soldering my components, it's just easier to read. Now, let's go ahead and move on to routing our board. First, I'm going to be using Quick Route. This is a great option if you have some straight connections that need to be done, such as buses. We also could use fully manual routing that will give you complete control of your routing. Since we have the walk around violator still active, it's going to help us avoid any design rule violations. For my last example, I will route the trace beginning at the bottom layer and use the spacebar to switch to the top layer to complete my route. If I have more than 2 layers, I could use the spacebar to cycle through all my layers. Now, I would like to finish with the quick route again, but the option for smooth routing. This will take existing traces that have been routed and it will look for a much better, cleaner path to an existing trace. I'm going to use the unroute option to get rid of all the traces that we've done so far. That way we could use the outer router. which will automatically route your entire board based on your design rule settings. I could set the amount of effort, and this will cause many more threads to run concurrently, giving me more options to select from at the end of the auto router. Notice that it's completed a route fairly fast. With the board completed, I can use the switch to 3D model of the PCB for a realistic 3D view of my design. Well, this concludes our demo. Thank you for joining me. All this and more with Fusion 360.